podcast where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian. With me is Willow.
Hello.
Talk fast because this one's long.
Okay.
And I'm not even going to chit-chat, so here we go. Okay, trigger warnings. Sexual assault, necrophilia, child sexual assault, child abuse, attempted suicide, graphic depictions of horrible things. Do not, for the love of God, listen to this if you've got kids around or if you're triggered by these things. This was really tough research. This case is bananas. So this is Carol M. Bundy, part of the duo of the Sunset Strip killers.
Not related to Ted Bundy.
Not related, no. On August 11th, 1980, in Burbank, California, a 37-year-old woman named Carol Bundy called the police. She claimed that her boyfriend, Douglas Clark, was the infamous Sunset Strip killer. These were a string of murders of young women, sex workers, and runaways that were on the Sunset Strip in California. Carol told the 911 dispatch that she'd been present for many of these murders, but what investigators didn't know, at least not at first, was that Carol was an active participant. Carol Mary Bundy was born Carol Mary Peters on the 26th of August in 1942. She was the second child of Charles and Gladys Peters. Carol absolutely adored her parents and idealized them. And I don't say idolized, I'm saying idealized, because her parents were garbage. They were both raging, abusive, controlling alcoholics. And I think there was more going on with her mother, and I tried to dig into it. There's really not a ton of information on her mother. There is on her father, however. She would deny and deny and deny that her parents ever did anything wrong when questioned by police. It took a lot of prying to pull it out of her. Carol was, by all accounts, an unattractive and awkward child. She had big glasses because of astigmatism and was frumpy even as a kid. And I'm only mentioning this pisses me off, because anytime I researched this case, we just want to talk about how because Carol is fat, that this is why she did all this. And that she was ugly, fat and ugly, so nobody wanted to fuck her, and so that's why she went all 6s and 7s on us. Look, I'm fat, okay? I ain't never had no trouble getting laid, and even if I did, I'm not gonna murder people. Right. So while I do think there is such a thing as pretty privilege, I absolutely believe in it. It's just easier in the world if you're good looking. But I mean, I've looked at pictures of this woman. I would describe her as perhaps plain. Maybe if she'd had a more flattering haircut. She wasn't like hideous. She wasn't malformed. She was just an average looking person. And reporting on female murderers, why are we always talking about what they look like? To the like way past how we talk about male serial killers. Of course, there are exceptions. You have Ted Bundy, and everyone talked about how hot he was, which is baffling to me as a big weird head.
I literally saw, while I was researching earlier, I saw, like, you know how like whenever you type in Google and there's like a bunch of other questions with drop downs? One of them was the most attractive serial killer, and it was Ted Bundy. And I was like,
nah, I'm good.
No.
How about none?
Exactly.
Why are we asking?
Exactly.
Why are we asking these kind of questions? What the fuck is wrong with y'all?
I do see it more with female serial killers than male serial killers. And I mean, we have, like, it's like, what, like 95% of serial killers are men?
Yeah. This made this month actually kind of hard.
It really did. It made the research really difficult. But, like, no, and I can't really think of any case besides maybe, you know, Ted Bundy,
Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, he was an attractive guy.
Yeah.
He was a good-looking dude.
Some people really like Richard Ramirez.
Oh, God.
He's very attractive.
No.
But my point is that there's all these male serial killers, and we're not describing their looks or
attributing their looks to that the reason they killed because they're lonely, because they too fuggo to get a date.
Exactly.
And, you know, in doing this case, whether you think she was ugly or not, she didn't have no problem getting a date.
Mm-hmm.
or this would have never happened. Just saying. And why are we calling a child unattractive?
Yeah.
I chose that word specifically for a reason, because it was in so much of the research that I did. A child is neither attractive or unattractive.
It's a child.
It's a child. And the fuck's the matter with you people writing stuff? God damn. She was teased in school, probably for wearing glasses. Look, I got teased in school for like existing and breathing weird. Who knows? It just doesn't matter. When Carol turned 8, her mother rejected her utterly. One day when she came home from school, she found the doors locked to the house, and no amount of begging or pleading or crying with her mother worked. Gladys maintained that Carol wasn't her little girl and refused to allow her back in the house.
Why?
Don't know.
Just fucking because?
I think she had a break, like a psychotic break or something. Only Carol's father, Charles, was able to convince her mother to let her back in, but once she did, she never treated Carol the same again and kind of just ignored her for the rest of her life.
That's weird.
It is weird. Carol learned to take the abuse her mother heaped on her. She would go into like a kind of wild, enraged state and whip and thrash the children until someone had to bodily pull her off of them. Once Gladys beat Carol as she was reading a comic book, and Carol did not cry, she didn't flinch, and she didn't complain, because she had learned that if she became the ultimate victim who was so kind and forgiving her abusers and their weaknesses and their transgressions against her, then that made her a better person than them, and it gave her power over them. And so that's how she reacted to abuse from then on out. She just didn't.
Fucked up.
It is fucked up. And let's be clear, Charles, her father, beat the children too, but just not as severely or as with much relish as Gladys did. And he was very controlling and possessive. Carol's mother died when Carol was 11, and Charles, instead of comforting his children, informed his daughters Carol and Vicky that they would have to replace their mother in the bedroom.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, both of them were really scared and didn't want to do that.
What the fuck?
Vicky's the younger sister, and so Vicky and Carol played a game that the loser would have to go and perform for their father. And Vicky was the one who lost.
That is vile.
But, I mean, of course, he turned his attentions to Carol as well. And this was a huge betrayal and violation, obviously, but especially to Carol, who was so people-pleasing that she just couldn't understand why this was happening to her. And despite his abuse, even when in jail, she did nothing but speak highly of him.
Oh, my God.
When Carol turned 15, she kind of had a precocious puberty. She was very busty. And she noticed the boys liked this, and it was attention.
Yeah.
And she became a person who just desperately craved attention and affection and approval. And so she became very promiscuous at this age. And she would sleep with just anybody that showed her any interest whatsoever. And this is really common.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, of course.
In child sexual
Yes.
abuse.
Yes, absolutely.
When Charles remarried, his attention became more violent and humiliating. Charles started beating her more viciously and regularly, and he started emotionally abusing her as well, calling her fat, ugly, and stupid. A few months after Charles remarried, Carol came home to an empty house. She found her pet cat dead, and an empty shotgun case on the floor, and everything was covered in blood. Carol, terrified, waited for someone to come home, and finally Charles came home and told Carol that he had planned on killing the entire family, starting with his new wife after he'd killed the cat for some fucking reason. But Charles's wife had been able to get the gun away from him, and after this terrible event, Charles sent Vicky and Carol to a foster home. Carol bounced around 7 foster homes for a while, then went to live with her grandmother in Michigan. Less than a year later, Charles would come for both of his daughters who were staying with an uncle in Indiana, and he took them back to California. So this period of her life from 15 to 17 was very tumultuous. She bounced around foster homes, was abused there. She stayed with her grandmother, didn't get on with her, had to go live with her uncle, and then was forced to go back to her abusive father. It's terrible.
I know that she goes on to do some really horrendous things.
Oh, yeah.
But I just feel so bad for her in this
We
moment.
can feel bad for little girl Carol, who did not
Absolutely.
deserve or ask for any of this. Do I feel bad for adult Carol? Fucking no.
Right.
When Carol turned 17, she married a 56-year-old man.
Whoa.
Mostly to escape her father.
Yeah,
His name,
Jesus.
terrible. His name was Leonard, and the marriage didn't last very long. Leonard was a raging alcoholic, and he tried to prostitute her. Carol left him and soon after met a man named Richard Geis. He was 32, still gross, and he was a erotica writer, and he wrote science fiction as well.
Huh.
And he wasn't particularly attracted to Carol, but he did like that she was what he thought very intelligent. I would disagree, but that's okay. And so eager to please that it was pathetic. But he liked that because he liked the attention, because of course he did.
Right.
And I don't know. It's just gross. But he tried to encourage her. Like, I don't know. I think he had a fondness for her that wasn't romantic. I think they were friends. And he told her she should get into writing. And she did really well with it. She sold and published a short story. And she was very creative. And then she got into, like, making comic strips and stuff.
Oh, good.
But she abandoned all this.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 1962, Carol's father hung himself. Good.
Yeah.
Carol blamed herself for his death and for the abuses he visited upon her. Her romantic relationships were a mess, especially after his death. She started sleeping with women, but then one of the women she was with would hurt her feelings or break up with her, and then she would go back to men. And then one of the men she was seeing would
I mean, I
hurt
feel
her.
that in my soul.
And then she would go back to women.
Yeah.
And, like, I understand this, but I think it's interesting. I don't think she had a sexuality at all. I think she just wanted someone to give her attention.
And that's the only way she knew how to get it.
And that's the only way she knew how to get it.
Yeah.
I just think it's sad.
It is sad.
Carol and Richard moved to Oregon and were living together when Richard found out she was sometimes sleeping with other men for money. And he thought she was a pretty disturbed person, clearly.
Yeah.
And it's annoying because he didn't encourage her to get psychiatric treatment, and he should have.
Or was he just like, stop?
Kind of. Yeah. He's like, do
about you
not.
just don't?
How about we don't? And that doesn't work.
No.
And I just wonder what would have happened.
If she would have sought treatment.
However, he did encourage her to get a career, and he paid for her to go to nursing school. And she went in Santa Monica because they had moved back to California. She made class valedictorian and graduated in 1968. Wow. And so things right now seem to be going really well for Carol. She got her life together. She and Richard broke up and were no longer romantically involved, but they were very good friends. She would go on to meet and marry a man named Grant Bundy, who was also a nurse, that she met him at work. And until her first son was born, the relationship and Carol was stable. At one point during their marriage, she left Grant to have a lesbian affair, but came back after spending thousands of dollars on her girlfriend. This is a pattern. Carol will do anything to please the person that she's with. She buys extravagant gifts. You know, if they even mention, oh, I really like that, she would go out and get it. It is pathetic.
I understand this part of her. I don't have money, but I would be that way if I had money, for sure. Because
I'm not very materialistic, so I tend to go for experiences or trying to be thoughtful.
Yes, absolutely. But I understand the trauma and then all of that.
Yeah, it's just really
it's sad.
It's sad.
It's really sad.
In January of 1979, Carol took her two boys and went to a woman's shelter because Grant had become very abusive, and the reason he had started becoming abusive was because her eyesight started failing and she was going blind. And he was so enraged that he might have to take care of the boys and a blind wife that he just took to beating her all the time.
How dare she have bad eyesight?
And she couldn't work anymore and she had to be on disability. 2 weeks later, she found an apartment in Valerio Gardens in Van Nuys, a suburb in the San Fernando Valley, where she moved with her two boys, 9-year-old Chris and 5-year-old David. That's not his real name. This is where Carol met John Jack Murray and his wife, Jeanette. And they were the managers of her apartment complex. And Jack kind of served as the handyman. And almost immediately after moving in, Carol and Jack started having an affair. And Jack was a very charismatic, very handsome, outgoing person. He liked singing in a club nearby. It was like a bar. And he was just a big philandering jerk. He was a womanizer. He was always with different women. But he really liked Carol. And, for how she's described, because it constantly states that he was so much better looking than her. And so she knew this.
God,
and
that's so annoying.
And I'm just like, yo, look, I'm going to be straight with y'all. I've dated some fuggos.
You're going to be straight with us?
No, well, not like that.
Yeah.
Ew, no. I've dated some people who would not be considered traditionally attractive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I liked their personalities. Yeah. And, they were fun. Who cares? Who cares?
I can't date people that don't have flaws. It's creepy if you don't have flaws. I know everybody
Girl,
does.
you date some people with some flaws that are not flaws. They big old red flags.
Yeah, girl, I do.
Fucking stop. All right. So I think that he liked her because, number one, she was intelligent, according to reports, although she does so much dumb fuck stuff. That makes me wonder. But I think it was the people pleasing.
Yes.
She had no personality of her own. She never talked about herself. She just let Jack prattle on and on about himself. And you're like, ho, 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 laughing at every joke. Men love that. Mm-hmm. If you don't talk all night and you just laugh at your jokes, they will propose by the end of the evening. I can't hang with that shit. But that's how it was. And so he started coming over a lot to her apartment. And at first she was calling him over there for little handyman jobs. It was just an excuse to see him.
Yeah.
And then by the third time he visited her, they were in bed together. And this is where she spilled to him how she'd been beaten and horribly abused, not only by her ex-husband, but by her father, and that now she's going blind. And he did give her sympathy, and that's what she really wanted. Yeah. She wanted people to feel sorry for her. Yeah. And girl, legit at this point, I feel sorry for you. Yeah, that sucks. Absolutely. And he said, maybe you should go to another doctor and get a second opinion on your eyes. It's a good suggestion. But because it seemed that to her meant he loved her.
Oh.
She immediately was just like, oh, he loves me because he cares about me.
Yeah.
This is a pattern that will continue for the rest of her life, and it just... It's at sad. This stage, you don't know how unhinged it is, but later, it's just obvious not a single man in her life ever loved her.
That's so
but
sad.
She thought they did. It's not sad. At a certain point, it's pathological, and it isn't sad, it's sick.
Yeah.
It's sick. She became obsessed with Jack. She followed him around the complex, would rush outside when she heard his work van. She would give him oral sex in empty apartments and in the back of his van in between doctor's appointments. And he would take her, where he would take her for her eyes. She didn't get much physical excitement out of the relationship, but she really believed that he cared for her and loved her, and to her that was more important. Sex was almost something to be endured, Mm-hmm. And girl, I understand that part.
Oh my God.
Not now. Now it's great, but oof.
Yeah.
How many dudes have you been with where you're like, what was that? Ugh. Carol fell more deeply in her obsession with Jack as the months went by. Though she'd had her tubes tied after the birth of her second son, she constantly fantasized about marrying him and having his child, because she assumed he was in love with her. He helped her with her divorce settlement from Grant, and it got her $25,000. Yeah. He helped her get a second opinion on her vision, which led to surgeries, and it corrected some of the damage, allowing her to see again. So I can see how,
why she thinks this.
Yeah. And don't think too highly of Jack either, by the way. We'll get to that. But despite this, Jack just wasn't leaving his wife. No matter how much money she gave him, no matter how many gifts, how much attention, how much oral sex, how much doing anything he wanted, how much never talking, he was not leaving his wife, Jeanette. When she got her settlement, she did everything she could to try and keep him. And when he told her he couldn't leave his wife because she had cancer and the treatments were expensive, he didn't want to abandon her while she was sick, Carol straight up paid for the treatment. She gave him $10,000. Remember, This is back in 1960s, 70s, almost 1980. Yeah.
And still nothing.
Well, because then he wouldn't be obligated to take
Exactly.
care of her, and then he'd leave her. That did not happen.
Yeah.
So she had an affair with Jeanette's younger brother, Warren, to make Jack jealous, but he didn't care. Carol had her second eye operation, and being able to see again, she had felt so beautiful with Jack, like glowing and radiant. But when she could see herself again, she realized,
honey.
I'm just kind of frumpy and plain. And it was a real big blow to her self-esteem. And so she just kind of felt fat and ugly, which I understand. I have felt that way as well.
I get that.
And now she could really see him and see how handsome he was and how charismatic and how any woman would envy her in having such a man. While she was still recovering and receiving her regular disability and the settlement of the $25,000 from the sale of her house, she felt rich, but girl, that ain't rich. And she went on a crazy spending spree. She spent $4,000 on new furniture for her house. And back in the 80s, $4,000 is ridiculous.
Yes.
She bought new clothes. She spent just like a fortune on beauty treatments and at the hair salon and makeup and trying to make herself more attractive. She constantly was buying gifts for Jack. She bought him a VCR, and back then that was the shit. A new desk for his office. And this wasn't the first time she'd had a problem with spending. While married to Grant, she ran up huge credit card bills, and like not long before Carol left him, Grant had cut up all her credit cards because she had spent more than a month's wages on Christmas presents for her sons.
Wow.
So then she planned a romantic Vegas trip for her and Jack. And they checked into a hotel and they watched some TV, but then suddenly Jack's mood kind of soured and he went off to gamble. And this trip was supposed to be a whole weekend thing. He didn't come back until they got back on the plane to go home.
Holy shit.
He's done with her, and he's been done with her for a minute.
He's using her.
He is using her. Carol was heartbroken to learn that Jeanette... Oh, sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so she left her suitcase in his van. Jeanette found it and angrily came to her apartment to confront her. And she mentioned the cancer, and Jeanette had said, I never had cancer.
What the fuck?
So Carol confronted Jack about this, and he admitted that no, she hadn't had cancer, and he had used the money to pay off his van. Wow. She immediately forgave him and held out hope they could be together. She is delusional. Unlike this, you can kind of like this first one, you just think maybe she got, sometimes you get obsessed with a person, I guess. I've never been there. But I can see it happening. I can see how it happens. And, she's lying to herself because she feels alone. She hates being alone. It freaks her out. Being a single mom is the worst. Like, I get it.
And she doesn't feel good about herself.
No. And so she thinks this is the treatment she deserves.
Yeah.
And so she just lets him walk all over her. And she just thinks if she's the cool girl,
right,
that he'll come back.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen. Though he still hadn't left his wife by Christmas, Jack kept making promises that he would. Carol held on to this thin strand of hope until Jack broke his promise to spend Christmas Day with her. So she went to Jeanette and offered her $1,500 to leave. The audacity. Jeanette said she would leave if that's what Jack wanted. So she waited Carol waited in the driveway for Jack to get back home, and waited for Jeanette and Jack to have a talk, and she was just convinced he would walk out that door and they would be together. Instead, he came outside and told her to leave him and his family alone. 3 days later, Carol was still pursuing Jack. She got all dressed up like super fancy to go to this place called the Little Nashville Club. And it was like a favorite spot of Jack's to hang out after work. And he would do singing there and get drunk and hit on women. And hoping like he would tell her like, hey, I didn't mean it. I was just mad. I didn't want to hurt Jeanette's feelings. Of course, we can run away together. That is not what happened. When she went to the Little Nashville Club, she found Jeanette and Jack together. And it kind of dashed her hopes of a fantasy marriage to Jack. She knew he would never leave his wife, and her worst fear came true. She was abandoned and alone. But that was going to change in just a couple seconds, because there in the Little Nashville Club was a handsome blonde man smiling at her from across the bar. The man, like her, was kind of overdressed and too fancy for this place, and she took that as a sign that they were going to fall in love and be together, like it was fate.
Because of his outfit?
Yeah.
Oh.
His name was Douglas Clark, and he was a perfect gentleman that first evening they met. He wasn't crude and didn't make sexual advances. He took her dancing at another bar and promised to call her. And Carol had never met anyone like him and couldn't wait for him to get back in touch with her. She probably had no idea at this time that he was a depraved killer. Her hopes that Doug would contact her were realized a couple days later. Doug wanted to have dinner with her and her sons, but Carol was kind of like, I don't usually bring my sons around my romantic interests.
Yeah.
But he insisted. He was very bossy, very demanding. And of course, that's her weakness.
Yeah.
So she was like, okay. So they came over, had dinner. The kids liked him. He was very nice. He tucked her boys into bed and he told them, I will be spending the night. Without asking. But Carol thought that was hot.
Yeah.
She was like, ooh, yeah, he's taking charge, and I like that. A man do that psycho shit to me, and I will kill him. Get out. I don't know, I find that very creepy.
Yeah.
But she liked being told what to do. Their first night together was so incredible for Carol that I think it changed the entire course of the rest of her life. She had never had anyone be like that with her while she was being intimate. He was very attentive, focused on her pleasure. He was praising her, telling her how smart and wonderful she was, and how much he loved giving her pleasure. She was just putty in his hands. Before leaving for work the next day, Doug seemed upset. He seemed kind of distant and cold, and so Carol was like, oh no, panic mode, you know.
Yeah.
She'll do anything to keep him, anything. And she's like, oh my God, what's wrong? He didn't want to tell her. She finally pulled it out of him. He was having trouble with his landlady, so he said. And he needed somewhere to stay for a few days. And he wondered if she would let him stay with her. Mind you, they've been on 2 dates.
They've known each other for 2 days.
And she's like, hell yes, move right on in.
That's kind of true to her personality.
Yes, it is. And then as he's leaving to go to work, he's like, hey, can I have a pair of your panties? Now, she thought this was like hot, sexy, and romantic. I would be like, you may not have my drawers.
Yeah.
Quit being weird.
Yeah.
And
But she was like, oh, hell yeah, let me take them off right now.
I did sell my panties for a while.
Oh, good for you.
Not any I wore. I bought them at Walmart.
Oh, really?
I did some really gross. I would get like cans of tuna and just put the juice in the crotch.
Stop. That's gross.
Yeah, but man, they were into it.
Ew.
These days, y'all, because some of you are sitting there going like, hey, girl, how I get in on this panty selling shtick? These days, you have to do way more than just send some tuna fish panties. You've got to like...
There's websites for that.
Yeah, but you have to post nudes. You have to do chats.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's selling their underpants these days. This is back when the internet was new. And I, of course, immediately hoed on it. At first, she was just kind of like, oh, I don't know. But he made it seem really romantic. So and listen, Carol was not the type to have like frilly little panties. These was big old granny panty cotton bloomers. And when she gave them to him, he was disgusted at how big and frumpy they were. So he said he didn't want them.
Oh.
And it really hurt her feelings because, of course, she felt so rejected.
And embarrassed.
Yes.
So did she get new undies?
No.
Oh.
It was just that she was fat and they were too big.
I figured she would go to like Victoria's Secret after that and like spend
But
a bunch
she
of money.
like immediately got over that shit and was just like, I'm going to please him and do everything he says and he will never leave me. But this new love didn't get rid of her feelings for Jack, and she was still sending him love letters, hoping to reconcile. However, her repeated attempts to reinsert herself back into his life caused him to tell her to leave the entire apartment complex. He wanted nothing to do with her.
Wow.
Heartbroken, she found a 2-bedroom apartment 3 miles away. And Jack and Jeanette helped her move. Like, that
Oh
is,
my
I would
God.
die. I would die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd think that'd be over with them, right? No, he started coming over 3 to 4 times a week to have sex with her.
Jack?
Yeah, and take money. He was using her for money.
I don't know why I'm appalled at the audacity, because the audacity keeps going, and I should be used
Every
to it by
man's
now.
audacity in this story is so, like, poof, I can't, I got to get through the rest of this. Okay, calm down. Doug, her new paramour, did not like Jack at all. They'd met at the little Nashville club and just kind of immediately despised each other. Carol thought this was because the men were jealous and fighting over her,
Clearly.
which she loved, but that was not it. They just didn't like each other. She told Doug how mean Jack had been to her and taking all these money and gifts and how he'd never commit to her and he sexually abused her and all this other stuff. And Doug said, well, stop seeing him then. And his response made her believe he loved her.
Oh my God.
She instantly assumed he loved her because of that.
So did she stop seeing Jack?
No.
Okay.
Even though it's clear to most people that Doug is just taking advantage of her,
Yeah.
he's staying in her apartment for free.
Homosexual.
He is not paying any rent. He is not buying his food. She's given him gifts. She gives him sex whenever he wants it, however he wants it. But already he seems less interested. She would not admit to herself that her relationship with Doug was as one-sided as her relationship with Jack. He wouldn't do nothing but talk about himself. He showed no interest in anything Carol had to say or any of her hobbies or anything. And this would have continued until I think he eventually just dropped her, except he read an article in a magazine about how if you really love somebody, what you do is fulfill your lover's fantasies. And no. Whoever wrote that's an idiot. First of all, you are not here to fulfill anything. Let's go ahead and be clear on that. And women are really bad about people pleasing, aren't we? Yeah, yes. We all are. I have a hard time saying no.
Genetically engineered to please people.
It feels like that, but it's socially engineered.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Genetically, we're not that too different from dudes.
Sometimes, though.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's a social thing that we've been in for.
I think there's some genetic memory.
Yeah,
but I don't think that in our genes we're natural caregivers necessarily. I think that that's just how society has pushed us to be, and there's so much expectation on women.
I mean, how many generations was that? Like, it's been forever. I can't remember a recorded history time period where women weren't subservient to men.
No, we have to be because they'll hurt us if we're not.
Exactly.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why you see, okay, y'all who are single and you're on the Tinders, you're on the apps, okay, and you're looking for a top in a sea of bottoms. And it's just, I think that men, especially cis-het men, not a lot of them are like daddy doms or anything like we would all hope because they're in charge of everything. When you're already in charge of everything, then you want a hot lady to step on you.
Oh, yeah. I guess so. Balance. But I don't like that. I'll step on you with my car. Yes. Anyway, so he reads this article and he tells her, like, I have all these fantasies I've never told anybody, and I want to share them with you, and we can make our fantasies come true. Her fantasies are all just like, love me, you know, and his are very bad. But it became this sexual obsession between the two of them. It was kind of like he was grooming her. Yeah. Slowly, his fantasies became more and more disgusting and evil and vile, but Carol was aroused by all of it. Her favorite fantasy of Doug's was where he would kidnap a young girl and keep her as a sex slave. She liked to role play this out with him as her as the young girl. And this is where I'm going to talk to y'all about something real quick. Yeah, because I want to have this discussion about this, and I think it's important. There is a line between fantasy and reality. Like, I know a lot of women, especially sexual assault survivors, who do, like, have rape fantasies, for example. It's almost a way of taking back that trauma and having control over it and turning it around into something nice that you have with your partner. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. I think there's some things that shouldn't be fantasized about, like children, for example. Maybe murder. Maybe let's not do that. But just about anything else I'm pretty down with. I write erotica for a living. I also do like custom stories for people. And yeah, I'll do that for you. If you message me, I will write you whatever nasty thing you want with some limits. And I think fantasy is a really
healthy thing in a relationship, especially sharing them with your partner. It can be very exciting. I'm a big fan of role play. That is how I met Maris on World of Warcraft. It's the whole reason we're married. So this whole part was very weird to me to research. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've RP'd some nasty shit. Not like that. It's far more wholesome. But, I don't want somebody sitting there going like, oh, me and my husband or boyfriend or me and my girlfriend did a really weird role play and now I feel kind of, no, it's fine. It's safe to explore taboos in a fantasy setting.
Yes. Yes.
Probably even healthy, y'all.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. It's when you take it out of the bedroom, like these two do, that it's not okay. It's not okay. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on that because I don't want anyone sitting there going, oh no, I'm a sicko or anything. Nah.
No, and a lot of times you can heal a lot of sexual trauma through that.
Yes, I have, actually. It has been very therapeutic for me. So helpful. It gave me my agency and my power back.
Yes. Yes.
And it was a healing experience. Like, I could cry. Like, that's how nice it was for me. So, like, we all explore our own trauma. Like, trauma, sexuality, relationships, really complicated.
Right.
And we can't boil it down to, ooh, I had a naughty thought about this, so now I'm evil.
Right.
No, you're evil if you do it.
Yeah.
There's no thought crime. Stop that. And then sometimes there's intrusive thoughts, too. Sometimes you can't control the way your body responds to certain things, especially because of trauma.
Right.
So I don't want anyone sitting there feeling guilty. Moving on. Doug was very hot and cold in the relationship. He would go away for days at a time. And when he returned, he would introduce necrophilia into their fantasy role play.
Where would he get... Okay. Yeah.
Carol wasn't disgusted. She was into it.
That's fucked.
I find that one weird. But again, if it's just in a fantasy setting...
Oh, it's fantasy?
Yeah, they're just role-playing.
Oh, okay.
They're just role-playing.
I was like, where did they get the dead body?
I'm not role-playing that hard, like with props, dude. It's just talking.
I just don't know.
During one of Doug's disappearing acts, Carol met a man named Art through the personal ads. This is going to be her last chance at a healthy relationship, and she should have taken it. She didn't find him attractive. He was very heavy, but he was so kind. He helped her and cared for her genuinely, but she stopped seeing him because she was addicted to Doug and his sick fantasies.
Yeah.
And she still wasn't over Jack. When Carol decided to buy a new car after getting her driver's license again, Doug picked it out even though she couldn't see out of it very well. And she dinged, like, she had a little fender bender, and she, like, backed over a curb, and when she did, out of the visor, like, a big hunting knife, like, fell into her lap. Now, he told her, oh, I keep this for protection, against strangers. And she was like, okay. And he was like, you know what? You should get a gun. So together, on April 24th, Doug selected 2 guns. And they were 25 caliber semi-automatic. They were automatics. By this point, Carol is practically his slave. And Doug would later admit to this. He totally dominated her life. She took to beating her oldest child because he didn't like Doug. And Doug abused the boy too. Carol's willing submission to Doug's demands was complete by the time Doug showed her that, not showed her, but he told her, I could kill your kids anytime I want.
Jesus.
I could take this knife and ram it into his back and go up through his heart. He's saying this in front of Chris, the oldest. And as a mother, if you don't jump up and say, get the fuck out of my house.
Yeah.
She didn't. She said nothing. She said nothing. She just sat there. And of course it broke that child's heart.
Yeah.
And he loved his mama. She would do anything for Doug, anything to please him. When he told her he wasn't really attracted to her and didn't want to have sex with her anymore, she was devastated. But instead of leaving him, she went with him when he picked up sex workers. She would sit in the back of the car and watch as the women he hired failed to get him off. He had sexual issues. He had a small penis, which made him very upset. And look, it ain't the size, but a lot of men think so. I won't get into that. I'm not going to size shame anyone because that's transphobic as fuck.
And body shaming is just
we ain't doing
disgusting.
that. You can't help how your parts are.
Yeah.
But he was so into all of the other sick things that regular sex was not doing it for him. Yeah. boy, I don't know. So Doug never considered them in a relationship, even though she did.
Even though he lives with her?
Yeah. The whole time he's with her, he's trying to find a replacement for her. And he moved in with a girlfriend only to be kicked out a short while later because he tried to introduce his fantasies, and this woman was like, hell to the no.
Yeah.
Then he met a woman and almost started a relationship with her. He took her to an orgy in Hollywood, and he tended to like, for relationships, he would pick women he found kind of frumpy and overweight and unattractive on purpose because he knew they'd have low self-esteem.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The woman was not into this orgy. That's not a good date. And then she saw him, he like came up to her and he was wearing like women's underthings. And she reacted really poorly to this. She laughed at him and refused to have sex with him. And then like he took her home and they were hanging out. Although you'd think that it ended the date, but what do I know? And then he suggested, hey, why don't we kill your ex-boyfriend? And she was like, why don't you get the fuck up on out my house, fucking weirdo?
Jesus Christ.
This guy is really intense. Late spring, he met a woman and succeeded in getting her to be his girlfriend. And by that summer, he was living with her and her children, which is so scary to me.
Yeah.
Doug still saw Carol and made more violent threats towards her children, so Carol got rid of them by transferring custody to Grant, her ex-husband, even though he's an abusive cunt.
Wow.
Things hadn't worked out for Doug with his new girlfriend, and he wanted to move back permanently with Carol as soon as the boys were gone. And then Carol looked for a new apartment that would be walking distance to Doug's work. He worked at the Jergens factory. Carol had been aware that Doug had done more than fantasize about murder when he came home one night in late April of 1980, completely covered in blood. He came home a week later, covered in blood as well, and told Carol that he killed the boyfriend of a woman he'd been seeing who had attacked him the week before. And she's just like, okay.
Well, did you have fun, honey? Jesus.
Right. In late April, a woman named Charlene, a 22-year-old sex worker, barely escaped him, Doug, with her life. She'd been in the supermarket parking lot on Sunset Boulevard when she saw a man in a blue station wagon pull up. So she approached the car and she's like, hey, do you want to date? Because that's how sex workers work. And yeah, he agreed that he would give her $40 for oral sex. They drove away together. He stopped the car kind of on a side street, and she refused to get in the back seat with him because she wasn't comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. She's like, it's front seat or nothing, because a lot of sex workers will get assaulted or hurt doing that shit. Mm-hmm. And he, as she's like getting ready to go down on him, he put a knife to the back of her neck and then stabbed her repeatedly. She was able to get the knife away from him and run away.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
She's the only one of his victims that escaped.
I thought she was dead when you said that.
No.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. On the 11th of June, 1980, Cindy and Gina Morano had run away from home. They were stepsisters. Cindy was 15 and Gina was 16. They were good girls, but they had just moved. Their parents just remarried, and it was very stressful. Their grades started slipping. They kind of started running with a bad crowd. Their parents were very, very religious, and they were very strict, so the girls rebelled by running away from home. It happens. Mm-hmm. And on the night that they ran away, according to Carol Bundy, she came home from work and found a note from Doug telling her that he had been by and he would talk to her later. And it was kind of weird. So she felt like the note was weird and that he was up to something. So they both had cars, and she was gonna go take his larger car, the station wagon, to go grocery shopping. That was the ruse. But she really wanted to see, if he was out with women. She wanted to spy on him.
Right.
But when she gets in the car, she notices in the back seat that there is a duffel bag back there. And when she opens it, it's full of bloody clothes and a bloody blanket and paper towels. Forgetting about her plans or ruse of shopping, she took the bag with her and headed home. But on the way home, she stopped at a laundromat and washed the clothes. A green tube top and a maroon striped dress. The blanket was so bloody that she threw it away along with the paper towels. And those items had belonged to those girls.
Honey.
Carol finally got a hold of Doug a few days later, and he told her all of what he'd done. Because obviously, after seeing that and then covering his ass for him, without even knowing what he'd done, she'd been frantically trying to get a hold of him.
She probably assumed what he did.
She did. And she knew.
I'm assuming that by cleaning up his mess, she is, it's like an act of service.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yes.
She's trying to butter him up.
So he told her he'd been cruising down Sunset Strip. And when I say cruising in this case, he's looking to pick up a sex worker. Mm-hmm. He saw Cindy and Gina sitting at a bus stop. He stopped the car, rolled down the window, and tried to talk Cindy into getting in the car alone with him. But Cindy said she wasn't going to go without Gina. And so they both get into the car, likely to hitchhike. He sexually assaulted Cindy first. And then he told Gina to look away, grabbed his gun. He shot Gina behind the left ear. As Cindy sat up, he shot her in the head. Neither of them was dead, so he shot them both again. Gina in the head and Cindy in the heart. He took the girls to a garage, and please note, if this is going to upset you, this next bit's really fucking rough. And he rented, and Gina started moving again. She lifted up her arm. And he was like, oh, I'm going to have to shoot her again. But he just waited a moment, and she passed away. He then sexually assaulted their corpses and posed them lewdly. He returned to Carol's apartment, left her that note, then went back to his other girlfriend's apartment, took her camera, returned to the garage, and took photos of the girls' bodies. Then he wrapped the girls in a blanket and put them in his car. He dumped them down the side of an embankment on Forest Lawn, on-ramp of the westbound Ventura Freeway near the Disney Studios. The following Saturday night, Carol called the Van Nuys Police Department. She was put through to an officer, and she said her name was Betsy, and she told the officer that she believed her boyfriend had murdered the two missing girls. However, the items she found and washed didn't match what the girls were last seen wearing, and then the line got disconnected. The officer believed that Carol had hung up and it had been a prank phone call. No, the line just got disconnected, and then she weenied out, and she didn't want to call back. And I don't think she's doing this because she feels bad for the girls or she's even scared of Doug. She's doing it because he's not paying any attention to her.
Yeah.
This absolutely will be reflected later as we go forward. Later that night, Doug came home and told Carol to watch the news. One of the lead stories was about a man named Vic Weiss, whose body had been found in the trunk of a Rolls-Royce parked in the garage of the Sheraton Universal Hotel. And Doug told her he'd killed him. The next day, Doug took Carol for a drive. I would not get in the car with that man, and said he thought he might have to kill her. He drove her to a ravine in the Foothill Boulevard area and told her he had dumped the body of a sex worker there. This victim was later identified as Marnette Comer, a 17-year-old runaway. He stripped her body, kept her underpants as a trophy, and given her clothes to an 11-year-old girl that Carol and Doug lived next to in an apartment complex. And Carol had lured this child into her apartment so that they could molest her and shower with her and take nude photos of her because Doug fantasized about her. This woman, I have no empathy or sympathy for. She's a monster. Yeah. She's evil.
Yeah.
To please a man, you would do that to a child when it was done to you. That's the same age she was when her father raped her.
Mm-hmm. It's fucking disgusting.
On the 20th of June, 1980, Carol went with Doug for their first joint kill. At Hughes Market on Highland Avenue in Hollywood, they saw a blonde woman, and I should say girl, wearing cowboy boots. And she had like a really cute little outfit on. It had like little hearts on it and stuff. Mm. Doug called out to her, and at first she was trying to ignore him, but after a few more attempts, she agreed to get in the car. She looked about 17 years old and said her name was Kathy. I don't believe she was ever identified, by the way. Carol and Doug I'm sorry, I just have a hard time with this part. She just did this because she thought that he would get back with her if she killed killed women with him. They even made up a little code language they could use. Like if she wasn't down for it, she could say,
oh, yeah, she was
down for it.
Yeah, she was eating this up.
So she starts to perform oral sex on him, and Doug motions for the gun. He wants the gun because he's going to shoot her. And Carol hands it to him the wrong way, and he gets really mad. And so she sits up suddenly, and the kill doesn't go as well as it should have, for which Doug berates Carol. It's just disgusting. And then after he shot her, he told Carol not to panic, but she was fine. She was as cool as a cucumber. They dumped her body near the Magic Mountain amusement park. Doug told Carol later of the killing he did that night after they dumped the body of that 17-year-old girl. He'd seen 3 sex workers, and they were working together on Sunset Strip. A lot of girls will do this, while they're looking for Johns. Yeah. He couldn't get any of them to get into the car alone because he'd been out killing sex workers. It was all over the news, and they were only working in 3s and 2s. They wouldn't, split up.
Right, absolutely.
So he left, but when he came back, he saw that one of the women out of that group was now standing alone, and she did agree to get in the car with him. Her name was Exie Wilson.
Exie?
Exie. She's from Arkansas.
Cute. Oh.
They drove until Doug found an empty parking lot behind the Studio City Sizzler. While she was doing what he'd paid her to do, he shot her in the back of the head. But as she began to die, she bit him. He dragged her from the car, stripped her, took a green ring from her finger as a trophy, and so angry and enraged that she'd bitten him, he got his kill bag from the car. And Carol had made this for him. It contained knives and paper towels and gloves and rope and shit, because she's fucked up. He cut off her head, put it in a plastic bag, and then put it in the back seat of his car. Before going home, Doug realized that the woman's friends might be able to identify him, so he went back to where he'd picked her up, and I just find this so scary. He found one of the women there. She was waiting on her friend he'd just murdered. She got into the car with Doug, not knowing that the head of her girlfriend, Exie, was behind her on the floor.
Jesus.
Near Burbank Studios, he stopped the car, pulled out his gun, and she started screaming. Dogs nearby started barking, so he shot her in the left temple, which killed her instantly. Her name was Karen Jones. He pushed her body out of the car and then went to Carol's apartment after he couldn't find the third woman. Karen Jones and Exie Williams were both from Little Rock, Arkansas. They had run away from home and had been pimped out almost immediately upon arriving in California, and now they're dead. And I just think it's so sad. I just wish we had better protections for sex workers. It wasn't illegal.
Seriously.
It'd just be so much safer. As they talked about what he'd done, Carol was even more in love with him because he was sharing it with her and she knew he wasn't telling his other girlfriends. That meant she was special. She was the most special one. Then he showed her Exie's head, which he'd put in her freezer. He even bragged to her that while showering, he had orally violated the head. They decided to get rid of the car he'd driven because there was so much blood in it, so they had sold it to a coworker of his. Carol then bought a rough wooden box, and it was like a treasure chest almost is what it looked like, and she put Exie's head in it while it was frozen. She put makeup on it as well. But then they worried that there would be fingerprints in the makeup, so she washed it off. They drove to a back alley, which I think is just stupid. And she attempted to throw the box, couldn't throw it very far. It kind of broke when it landed, and a car was driving by as she did it. People say she's intelligent, but this is stupid.
Yeah.
I don't think she's smart. I think she's... Oof.
She may be book smart.
And of course, Doug just berated the shit out of her.
Yeah.
On the morning of June 27th, 1980, Jonathan Caravello found the box, and it was kind of blocking his parking space. He couldn't get out. So he got out, and he was like, oh, it's like a treasure chest. He thought it might have been a movie prop even. So he opened it and was horrified to discover what was inside. Doug and Carol's relationship started to break down and fall apart every day after this. It just was progressively getting worse. They fought. He threatened to leave. The only time he wanted to touch her at all is when they brought the 11-year-old girl to the apartment.
Oh, my God.
So Carol would try to bring her over as often as possible. Carol didn't know that Doug had been molesting the girl since he'd moved into that complex, and even took her with him while he picked up sex workers.
Where are the parents?
I don't know.
That poor girl.
Her name has never been released publicly, and I'm
Good.
glad.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really find any information on her past this.
That's good.
Although Doug and Carol continued to go out cruising together, they were unable to find anyone willing to get in the car with him alone because he was killing sex workers on the strip. Carol wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
She called up her old boyfriend, Richard Geis, and told him about Doug and the murders. And then she immediately said she was just joking after Richard told her to leave him. She called back and said she made it all up. It was just a story she was writing. At work, she'd become so erratic and her work so substandard, the other nurses avoided her as much as possible. On the 29th of July, 1980, Carol attempted to take her own life. Sitting in her car in the garage, she tried to overdose with injected insulin and Librium, which is a sedative.
Oh, my God.
She'd left a note for Doug so he could come save her. This was not to kill herself. She was not riddled with guilt for what she was doing and what she had done. This was to get Doug to go, "Oh, but I love you, Carol. Please do not leave me." Mm-hmm. But Doug didn't come to rescue her. As she started to get sleepy from the drugs, she drove to a restaurant car park and called her work and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm killing myself." And she gave them Doug's phone number.
What?
So they called Doug, and they were like, "Hey, Carol's killing herself." And he called the paramedics. She was taken to St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank. While she was there, and as they're releasing her after pumping her stomach and getting her, healthy again, who do you think she called to take her home?
No.
Just guess.
No.
Go ahead.
Jack?
Yep.
God.
The next day, on August 1st, Carol picked up the 11-year-old girl and dropped her at the apartment to distract Doug while she went and hanged out with Jack Murray. While she was out, Doug took the little girl out cruising for sex workers. They picked up a young woman. They stopped in a secluded spot. He paid her for oral sex, and literally the 11-year-old watched the whole thing. God. He dropped the 11-year-old girl back off at the apartment, drove off with the sex worker. He later told Carol that he had shot her in the back of the head while she was giving him oral sex. He dumped her body near the water towers in the Antelope Valley, but only after he had sexually assaulted her corpse. Yeah.
From a logical standpoint, why would you shoot someone in the back of the head when your appendage is in their mouth?
Because you're fucked up.
I get killing somebody is obviously really fucked up. But
this is a small caliber gun, so the bullets are not leaving.
Oh, it wouldn't go through?
No.
Okay. I don't know anything about guns. I'm just like...
I looked it up for that very reason.
I would be so scared to shoot my pee-pee off.
I wish he'd shoot his pee-pee off.
Yeah.
Carol went to see Jack to get him to have sex with her, but he said he wouldn't unless there was another woman involved. So Carol didn't know anyone, so she brought the 11-year-old girl.
What the fuck?
Now, you would hope Jack would be like, "Hey, what the fuck? I'm going to call the police." But instead, he was really into it. He started, fondling her. And he wanted to have sex with her. But Carol was disgusted because to her, with Doug, it had been pure and almost romantic to her. I don't know. She's not all home.
I don't understand.
And so she said no, he could not have sex with her. On the 3rd of August, Carol met up with Jack at the Little Nashville Club. He was there trying to, mac on another woman. Carol asked him to come outside because she wanted to show him something. So she showed him the kill bag in the back of her car. And she had already mentioned the murders to Jack. But again, she said it was a joke.
Right.
But now she couldn't go back on it. She'd shown him the proof in a strange, misguided way of winning him back. She wanted his sympathy, his pity. She wanted him to save her from Doug. But Jack was just scared. And he didn't really believe her. All he wanted to talk about was molesting the 11-year-old girl.
Oh my God.
She said she'd come back after the club closed and slipped him a note asking again for sex and promising he could have sex with the 11-year-old girl if he would sleep with her. When she returned to the bar after the club closed, she gave him oral sex in his van as he told her he wanted to sleep with the 11-year-old child. She'd already decided that Jack knew too much and he needed to die, and she wanted to impress Doug. So she shot him in the back of the head.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
She felt for a pulse, and he still had one. So she stabbed him repeatedly in the back at least 6 times. She then cut off his head to make identifying him harder, and she was afraid because the bullets were still in his head that could lead back to her gun.
Yeah.
She put the head in a plastic bag and took it home. Now, she thinks at this point that Doug is going to be so impressed with her and how thoughtful and sacrificing and amazing she is that he'll take her back and they'll be together again romantically. She called Doug before going home to tell him what she'd done. She went to his apartment and found the paramedics there. Doug's then girlfriend had had an epileptic seizure. But Carol suspected the woman had overheard her phone call with Doug, and I suspect so too, because that woman fled the fucking state the next day.
Wow.
Doug and Carol dumped Jack's head near Griffith Park in a trash can. By this point, Doug is starting to panic because the bullets are still in the head. They dumped it in a kind of public place. Like, it is closing in, and their relationship had changed. Because killing Jack had not brought them back together. He still didn't want to have sex with her. So, like, in this desperate state, she introduced Doug to a girlfriend of Jack's. God, it's just so sick saying, well, we'll have a 3-way. But instead, Doug slept with this girlfriend of Jack's, and she had to sleep on the floor of her own apartment. He rejected her. She just couldn't understand after all she had done for him and what they had been through that he didn't want her.
Right.
The next afternoon, she is showering alone, and Doug and his now new girlfriend are off in another bathroom showering together. The doorbell rang. She wrapped a towel around herself, went to the door. It is police detectives. Jack's body had been found, and they had questioned the patrons of the Little Nashville who had seen Carol with Jack the night he went missing. She didn't know what to do, so she asked, like, hey, just a second, I gotta put some clothes on. And so she runs and tells Doug. But there's nothing to be done. They're both donezo. Yeah. She had also called the police a bunch of times, which she would later confess to. So she is arrested along with Doug. And she confesses immediately to everything. She told them she enjoyed killing. She's not the least bit sorry. She would do it again if she could. She said, oh, killing's very fun. And in great graphic detail. Like, I had to leave. So I gave you the gist, but I can't get into details about, like, the abuse of the corpses of children. I'm sorry. You can look it up if you're curious, but I don't recommend you do so.
I don't need it.
So because she pled guilty, she was sentenced to life in prison. I mean, it was like a bunch of sentences, like 27 years, 54 years, 37 years.
For each individual case.
For each individual case. If you notice, I did not talk about Doug. I didn't talk about what's going to happen to him. I will be covering his side of this on Patreon.
Okay.
So if you want to hear that and hear about, because he's a whole bag of nuts unto himself. And if you want to hear that part of the story, join our Patreon at the $5 tier, and you'll be able to hear all of our additional episodes. But yeah, Carol died in prison in December 9th of 2003 from heart failure, and I hope she burns in hell. I have never seen somebody so doormatty, but like, she was into being a doormat. Yeah. It went beyond.
Yeah.
Like, because she tried the whole battered woman's excuse. She tried not guilty by reason of insanity. None of that worked. Because, yes, you can say she had clearly mental health issues.
She knew what she was doing, though. She knew what she was doing was wrong, and she did it anyway because she liked it.
Yeah, well, that's not the definition of legal insanity anyway. Legal insanity means at the time of the crime, you do not have the facilities to tell the difference between right and wrong. You do not know what you're doing.
Right.
She knew what she was doing was wrong the whole time.
Exactly.
And she would have done it again. She wasn't sorry. Here's the kicker. This is the fucking cherry on this entire shit Sunday. The detective who interrogated her, at the end, she told him she was sexually attracted to him and wanted to have sex with him. That is how far out of reality this bitch is.
Did he?
No.
Okay, I had to ask.
He had never experienced anything like that in his entire career. I've never heard of that. I heard of trying to fuck your way out of shit. I've done it. But but she just thought they could have a relationship. She thought he was nice.
Really?
She was really...
It's like anybody who makes eye contact with her or
says a nice thing just to be a human to her. And she's like, oh, you love me in a romantic way. You love me. I'll do anything for you.
That is such a sad disorder.
To me, I find her so scary that I can't even. She's going to give me nightmares.
It makes me wish that there was someone in her life that could have turned her. Like that one guy you said that really cared about her.
Yeah, Art was his name.
Yeah. It just,
I don't think there was no saving her by that point.
But, I just feel so bad for her. If she would have never met Doug, she probably wouldn't be this person.
No, look what she was doing with Jack.
That's true. But she wasn't, harming anyone.
I guarantee you she would have molested that little girl, whether Doug had been around or not, to get at Jack.
I forgot that, yeah.
Everyone in this entire case fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Except the victims.
Yeah.
I know Jack was one of the victims, but you know what? Fuck him.
Yeah, fuck him.
Fuck him.
Fuck him.
Because a lot of people,
I don't know if I could ever stomach beheading somebody, but I'd behead a person like that.
In an instant.
Yeah.
I can't stand that shit.
Yeah.
How he goes from being this charismatic dude that's just getting chicks all the time, but the first opportunity he gets to touch an 11-year-old child, he's like, down? Are you kidding me?
Not just down, but obsessed with it.
Yeah.
It's fucking disgusting.
I didn't even get into it too much because I fucking can't, dude. I will yak in every direction and die.
I really hope that little girl is okay now. I mean, she's a grown
I don't know
woman.
how she would be.
I know.
Bless her little heart. I just can't.
Mm-mm.
Woo! And the research in this was incredibly insensitive.
I can only imagine.
There, people say some real fucked up things about the 11-year-old child.
What?
Well, it was worse with Jack because she at least liked it with Doug.
What?
Oh, yeah. It said it in one of the articles I read.
Excuse the fuck out. I'm sorry for yelling.
Oh, I sent an angry letter. I sent an angry email.
Oh, I'm proud of you.
I've started doing that, by the way. When I'm researching and I find it victim blamey or disgusting in some way like that, I send a letter and I'm like, what the literal fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
And I'll send it to the author.
Yeah.
Or the podcast host. I just can't with this no more. I got to say something. I'm to the point where I'm like a breath away from publicly shaming. Because I'm tired of this shit. I need it to stop.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. And I want you guys, when you're consuming true crime media, to listen to how they speak about the victims and the perpetrators.
Yes.
It's important.
Yes.
You got to come at this with some gravitas and some sensitivity. And I feel like, yeah, we're funny sometimes. We joke, we laugh.
But never
about that.
Yeah.
Never. And I don't get victim blaming. And I know I'm not victim blaming Jack. He shouldn't have been murdered, I guess. But he molested a kid, so I'm just done.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just done.
Exactly.
I'm glad he's gone and he can't hurt anyone else. I don't think he should have gone out that way. I'd like to humanely push him into the sun or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's business time.
Oh, is it?
But I'm going to be super brief. We have a Patreon, as I mentioned earlier. I will be covering the Douglas Clark Sunset Strip Killers case in more depth there. Probably a two-parter because this
really
one almost
about
was
my
one.
next case.
Which one are you covering on Patreon?
I'm covering a case about a mother who robs a bank to save her daughter. Both of them had bombs strapped to themselves. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really intense. But,
that's interesting.
Yeah. It's a great case.
I'm also going to be doing part 2 of the Darlie Routier case and why I think she's innocent.
Right.
I'll already outlined the prosecution's case. I'll be outlining the defense's case. And at the end of that episode, I'm going to tell you why everyone fucked up.
Yeah.
And the Innocence Project has taken on her case, and I am behind her 100%. I do not believe
really
she did
broke
it.
my heart.
It's so hurtful. Mm-hmm. And then next, I'll probably be doing the Douglas Clark since it's fresh on my mind.
Right.
But this is the kind of content our Patreon episodes are sometimes like pretty long, like a good hour and a half. We do them 3 to 4 times a month. You get a bonus episode. Mm-hmm. We do something called And That's the Tea, little post-episode discussion. So check it out. Also, we have merch. We have a Discord. We have all kinds of great stuff. You can find that in the link tree. I am still doing tarot readings. If you're interested in getting one, I'm running a special. I don't want to go through all the prices, so that'll be in the description along with what I'm offering. And last but not least, fucking soap. Huh?
Yeah.
Soap? Do you need it
Girl,
to be clean?
I smelled some of it today and it's delicious.
Describe it.
Oh, I'm really bad at describing it.
Is it heavy?
No.
Is it magical?
Yes.
Is it feminine?
I told her, I was like, I want to lather my whole body in this. I want some lotion. And she's like, girl, I'm making lotion. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's a really beautiful design. The soap that you have, I'm looking at it, it's right behind you. It is like
I'm holding
triple,
it up now.
yeah.
I'm sniffing it.
Great radio. It's the triple moon goddess symbol. It's really cute with the moon phases through it in soap. Just brilliant. Just brilliant.
I want you to look at my soap and go, bitch, I don't even know how you did that.
Yes.
And
the moons look like real moons. Like they look like the moon.
I swirled that shit. It looks good. But listen, my soap is formulated for people with sensitive skin, especially if you have eczema or dry skin. My soap's very luxurious and moisturizing, and it smells expensive, but it's not expensive because it's soap. Why would I make it that expensive? They're little temporary works of art. They make your bathroom look cool. They make it smell cool.
Yeah, I was about to say it's also an air freshener just sitting there.
Oh, for sure.
Great.
Yeah. I have people that wait until the soap kind of starts losing its scent, because it eventually will. Soap is not perfume. It's a wash-off product. It's not meant to...
Right.
You're supposed to enjoy it while you're bathing, and then it's done, you know? I do make perfume oils and lotions if you want a more lasting fragrance. So get in touch with me. When I say I'm nearly sold out, y'all, I think I have like 1 or 2 gift sets left, and that's doubling my production from when I started. So we are almost out, and I'm almost out of individual bars too. I am releasing my secret soap pretty soon, and I do have only 10 bars of that. The last time I did this design, it sold out in less than 2 minutes. So if you want to get on it, get on it. Otherwise, I'm just going to go now. I'm very tired, and this case was very gross.
I didn't want to listen to most of this.
It was rough, y'all.
I did.
It's rough. Thank you for hanging in there.
Yes.
Hello to all of our new listeners, by the way.
Hi.
I see you. I see you.
And new people in Discord. Hi.
Hello.
And tons of new patrons.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm so grateful for each and every one of you.
Seriously.
Make my day, especially with your lovely, encouraging, and kind messages.
I received a letter in the mail.
Girl,
that made me cry.
That's so sweet.
It was beautiful. I've been receiving just so much love from y'all, and
it sustains.
It makes my heart beat.
Yeah, it sustains me. Mm-hmm. Like, y'all know I really struggled last year, and I didn't tell you this, but man, I was really sad, and you guys helped me through it.
I was reflecting earlier, and I realized something. Throughout the first year, especially of this podcast, I had a lot of self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all of that. I noticed at some point it went away. I no longer have imposter syndrome.
Me either.
At all.
We work really hard on this.
Yeah, like it took a long time to overcome it. But I think that through y'all talking to us, and, you know, we have so many people that have started out as listeners and have become practically family now. It's just...
We have built a very nice little community around this podcast, and I'm really, really grateful and humble for it.
I feel at home.
I feel at home too. And so I just wanted to take this time to thank you. And I want to thank you every episode. I know it might get old. You might even skip it, but I have to say it. You have to know how grateful I am for, even if you just listen and you never talk to me. I appreciate
wouldn't still
you.
Be here if it wasn't for y'all.
That is correct. This is because y'all, this is hard. This is hard to do for free as often as we do.
Right.
I mean, it's going to probably start, like, I pay off the equipment pretty soon, so it's going to start actually making money. That's very exciting.
On our third year, the beginning of our third year.
It's very exciting.
I just still can't believe that we're almost to our third season.
We're like a few episodes, we're like 2 episodes away now.
I know, I'm kind of freaking out. Yeah.
But hey, love you guys, and we will see you next time. You guys have a good day or night or whatever time it is you're listening.
Bye.
Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/cruelty has all of the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.